You are listening to Personal Development Mastery Podcast, and this is another snippet of wisdom where I select my favorite, most insightful moments from previous episodes. Today's snippet is from my conversation with Jamie Thornhill, who is an intuitive medium. It is about the steps we can take to strengthen our intuition and how to recognize the differences between the voice of the ego and the voice of intuition. I hope you find it insightful, and if you do, can you think of one person that would find it useful and share it with them? Thank you.
There are 5 what I call easy steps that we can use to begin to strengthen our own recognition that our intuition already exists. So I'll say it again to anyone listening. Your intuition already exists. You're already every day working with and utilizing your intuition to make decisions, even down to deciding what to eat, whether it has to do with your personal life, your work life. Everyone, all of us, all of you are behaving and acting from and engaging in intuitive ways on the daily basis. Again, whether you're conscious of it or not is just fine. It's still happening fluently. So really, all I want to do is share a few things that help us recognize that. And in recognizing that, we're able to strengthen it. So the first thing I would say, Augie, is become aware of or recognize any of your limiting beliefs around intuition. Now, I can tell you there's sometimes if you live in a certain area of the planet, you come from a specific culture, you grow up in a certain family, or you grow up with a certain religion or tradition. There can be beliefs about intuition that are uplifting or sort of downtrodden or anywhere in between. And so some of those limiting beliefs about intuition might be, oh, intuition is something that's only given to special people, gifted people. I hear this a lot. People are like, you're so gifted. I'm like, no, we're all, if I'm gifted, we're all gifted. So everybody's gifted, if we want to call it that, or we can just say it's natural for everybody. So that's one example of a limiting belief. So another step you can take right here, right now, everybody listening, is simply challenge your self-doubt. Self-doubt, basically, here's the tip or here's the hint. Self-doubt and skepticism, they're always the function of ego. And ego is a great tool that we have in this human incarnation that assists us, I'd like to say, kind of as I perceive it, assists us in staying alive and being very connected to the physical experience, keeping track of our bodies, making sure we're moving around, keeping ourselves safe, collecting all of our experiences, helping us remember, oh, last time I touched the stove, I burned my hand. I'm not going to do that again. So the ego has many beneficial purposes for us. Sometimes the ego gets a bad rap, and that's fine. It has some things it does that kind of keep us from our own inner authority. And I'll mention that here right now. But basically, something we can always know is that self-doubt and skepticism, they're the function of the ego. And it's the job of the ego to doubt things until it's experienced them and recognize that it's worked and everything's turned out okay. All right. Because that's the other thing. So what ego's going to say about intuition, ego's going to go, I see that you just had an instinct in making a decision about your business. Well, have you done the pros and cons? Have you researched this? Have you done the financial strategizing? And then your intuition's going to say, I don't need to do all that. I just know this is the right decision to make and we'll continue forward. And ego will say, I wouldn't do that. People aren't going to like it. Someone's going to get upset. You could lose your business entirely. And then intuition's going to go, I know this is the right decision. I can feel it in my gut. This is the direction. This is the only thing that feels like it wants to move forward. And ego's going to say, well, we don't really have any proof of that. How do you know that's true? This isn't very rational. And so, ego can just be recognized that any of that skepticism, Any of that self-doubt, that's ego speaking. Step number 3 would just be, a continuation of acknowledge your ego's voice. Begin to recognize and acknowledge your ego's voice, because in all truth and honesty, the ego and the voice of intuition are distinctly different. They're not close at all. And so it's not confusing and it's not mysterious. It's like, oh my gosh, sometimes I work with students and clients who will say, I can't tell if this is actually my intuition or if it's just my ego talking right now. And I always say, well, let's tune into the energy of it, the vibe of it. What are the words that it's saying? How does it feel? Because you'll know very quickly if it's intuition or ego. And let me just list a few things that are, when I mention them, they'll sound pretty obvious and you'll kind of feel them pretty quickly. The ego, when it's speaking to us or when it's having its say, it's often fear-based. It's afraid of what's going to happen. It's just afraid of what's going to happen. It's afraid of the outcome, afraid of the results. It's doubtful. It's not sure something's going to work. It's skeptical of the way something's being done. It has a tendency to make itself superior or inferior. It's never on equal footing with anything. It's always wanting to position itself as better than, or it's wanting to feel like it's less than and inferior. Oh, I'm not special. I'm not gifted. I'm not intuitive. Or, oh, look at me. I used my intuition. I'm better than most people. It's so funny. It makes me laugh. And then also the ego often wants an explanation, justification, wants a pros and con list, wants to rationalize it, wants to do research, wants to find out the pros and the cons. And it's fine. That's ego's job. Ego often perceives scarcity or experiences lack. Oh, there's not going to be enough. Oh, this is going to end poorly. Oh, we're not going to be resourced. Oh, this is going to result in us losing money or us losing work or us losing clients. And ego is also very, I want to say, sort of contractive or limited. It tends to want to stay within the parameters of what it knows. Okay, so that gives a pretty clear picture of ego that if you're listening, you may be able to feel. And again, I want to say this, the ego is not good or bad. We're not trying to get rid of the ego. We're not trying to ascend to a place beyond the ego. We're just trying to become aware of the ego and recognize its voice. And we're just trying to allow it to be present without needing anything from it. Now, alternatively, recognizing the voice of intuition. Intuition is love-based. And not just love for you. The love for you is for everybody. Love recognizes love itself, whether it stems from someone or goes out to someone, is actually for everybody. And so intuition's very love-based. It includes everything out into eternity. It includes everything. There's no limits. The voice of intuition is trusting, is knowing. It doesn't need an explanation. It doesn't need a bullet point list. It doesn't need to go research something to back it up. The voice of intuition is just knowing. And there's no words or visions or anything to sort of get distracted by. It's just a sense, and it's immediate and it's instinctual. The other thing with intuition, the voice of intuition, it has no need. It has no expectation of outcome. It has no dependency or attachment to results. So also the voice of intuition, it knows infinite abundance. It is infinite abundance. It's dousing us with infinite abundance, incessantly, fluidly, fluently, intact. It can never be diminished. It can never be limited. It can never even be defined. The moment you think you know it, it expands into something even more that is even more unfathomable. So also the voice of intuition's expansive out into the infinite cosmos. It has no desire to be limited or to have everything figured out. It's constantly curious in what else there is to learn and grow and experience. So this step number 3, just begin to have an awareness of and acknowledge the ego's voice and what the voice of intuition is.
Thank you for listening. You will find the full conversation with Jamie Thornhill in episode 284. The link is in the episode description. If you enjoyed this podcast, can you think of one person that would find it useful and share it with them? Until next time, stand out, don't fit in,